There's a frustrating feeling that a lot of people are dealing with right now, and it's hard to explain unless you've experienced it yourself. You're trying to do the right things with your money. You're thinking about saving. You're being more aware of your spending. Maybe you've even cut back in certain areas. And yet, at the end of the month, it still feels like there's nothing left, or at least not enough to make real progress. And that's what makes saving money in 2026 feel different. It's not just about discipline anymore. It's not just about knowing what you should do. For many people, it's about trying and still feeling like you're falling behind. Because the environment you're operating in has changed. Costs have increased in ways that don't always show up as dramatic spikes, but instead appear as steady pressure across everything. Groceries are a little higher, gas is a little higher, insurance, utilities, rent, each one just slightly more expensive than before. And when those increases stack together, they quietly reshape your entire budget. So even if your income hasn't changed much, your expenses have. And that creates a gap between what you expected your money to do and what it's actually doing now. A gap between your intention to save and your ability to follow through on it consistently. That's where the frustration comes from, because saving money isn't just about making a decision. It depends on having something left over. And when your baseline expenses rise, that leftover space starts to shrink. Sometimes it disappears entirely. And when that happens, it doesn't matter how motivated you are. There's simply less room to work with. This is why so many people feel stuck in this cycle of trying harder but not seeing results. They cut back in one area only to see another expense increase. They try to set aside money, but something unexpected comes up. A bill, a repair, a price increase that wasn't planned for, and the money that was meant to go into savings gets redirected. Not because of poor choices, but because of necessary ones. And over time, that pattern becomes discouraging. You start to feel like saving is something you're always about to do, but never quite able to sustain. It becomes inconsistent, occasional, dependent on everything going perfectly that month. And in reality, things rarely go perfectly. There's also a psychological weight to this that often goes unspoken. When you're trying to save and it's not working, it's easy to internalize that as a personal failure, to think that you're not disciplined enough or that you're doing something wrong. But in many cases, the issue isn't effort, it's structure, it's the environment. Because when the cost of maintaining a basic lifestyle rises faster than your income, the margin required for saving gets squeezed. And without margin, saving becomes difficult to sustain. That's the key difference. Saving money requires space. It requires a gap between what you earn and what you spend. And when that gap is small or unstable, saving becomes fragile. Even small disruptions can undo it. This is especially true when it comes to emergency savings. The idea of having 3 to 6 months of expenses set aside makes sense in theory. It provides security. It creates a buffer. But in practice, building that level of savings takes time, consistency, and available cash flow. And if your monthly budget is already tight, that process slows down significantly. You might be able to save a little here and there, but it doesn't accumulate quickly. And sometimes it gets used before it has a chance to grow. That's another reason saving feels harder. It's not just about putting money away, it's about keeping it there. And when your financial system doesn't have much flexibility, savings often becomes the first thing that gets tapped when something goes wrong. So instead of growing steadily, it resets. Then you start again. And while that effort still matters, it doesn't always feel like progress. At the same time, expectations haven't fully adjusted to this new reality. There's still an underlying belief that saving should be straightforward if you're doing things correctly, that if you budget, reduce unnecessary spending, and stay disciplined, you should see consistent results. But that assumption doesn't fully account for how much the baseline has shifted. Because when essentials take up a larger portion of your income, there's less left for everything else, including saving, and that changes the equation. It means that saving is no longer just a habit, it's a function of your overall financial structure, and improving that structure often requires more than small adjustments.
It might involve rethinking certain fixed costs, looking at housing, transportation, or recurring expenses that have a significant impact on your monthly cash flow. Not necessarily making extreme changes, but being aware of where the largest pressures are coming from, because those are the areas that shape your ability to save. There's also value in shifting how you think about progress. When saving feels slow, it's easy to dismiss small amounts as insignificant, but in a tight financial environment, even modest consistency matters because it maintains the habit, it keeps the system active, and over time, those small amounts do build, even if the pace is slower than expected. Another helpful shift is focusing on stability before growth. Instead of aiming for large savings targets right away, it can be more effective to create a baseline that's sustainable, an amount that fits comfortably within your current budget, even if it's not as high as you'd like, because consistency matters more than intensity. Saving a smaller amount regularly is more effective than trying to save a larger amount inconsistently. And once that consistency is established, it becomes easier to increase it over time, especially if your financial situation improves or certain expenses decrease. At a broader level, what's happening right now is a reflection of a tighter financial environment. Saving hasn't become harder because people suddenly forgot how to manage money. It's become harder because the system itself is demanding more just to maintain a basic standard of living. And when more of your income is required just to stay in place, less of it is available to move forward. That's the reality many people are navigating. So if saving money feels harder, even when you're trying, it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're working within a system that has less room than it used to, and recognizing that is important because it shifts the focus away from blame and toward understanding, toward making adjustments that are realistic, sustainable, and aligned with your current situation. Because progress is still possible. It might be slower, it might require more patience, but it's still there. And sometimes the most important step isn't saving more all at once, it's creating just enough space to keep going.